Welcome back to the Horror Emporium. Are you looking forward to Halloween just around the corner? I know I am. Anyway, down to business. Last time we spoke about The Thing. And this time I've got something much darker, much more gruesome. But is it any good? Ladies and gentlemen, I present you Jericho. Yes, Clive Barker. What's that? You don't know who he is? Well, Clive is an English writer and film director, most famed for his works of horror and fantasy. Heard of Hellraiser? Well, he directed that based on his own novella, The Hellbound Heart. So naturally, with this kind of famous horror master on board, Jericho has a really good head start. But what is it? What is Jericho, and why did so few people play it? Released back in 2007, Jericho is a first-person shooter at its core, with elements of survival horror and a story penned by Clive Barker. It was also developed by Codemasters. Yes, you know, that developer that makes all of the racing games. You know, the ones that feature F1, rallying. Yeah, that one. The premise is that General Arnold Leach gets a call from the Firstborn, a being imprisoned by God at the beginning of time in a patch of reality called The Box. Ha, Clive, you love your boxes filled with unspeakable evil, don't you? Anyway, Arnold Leach is convinced by the Firstborn to help him escape the box. So for the next 20 years, he commits acts of great evil to build up a dark energy to cause a breach in the box.
What kinds of horrid, unspeakable evil, you say?
I don't know, perhaps he didn't return a library book or went on holiday and left the bathroom light on. Such evil. Inevitably and eventually, the breach appears, and someone has to plug it up. Well, that would be you, wouldn't it? The player. Well, you taking control of 7 characters? Yes, 7 on one team. The gameplay revolves around the player switching between the different team members to perform different tasks whilst fighting hideous creatures in the breach. The game also features quick-time events. The team switching mechanic really added a level of tactics to the gameplay, and it certainly did stand out against other shooters of the time. You know, back when developers always tried something new instead of making the same horror game as everyone else. Each of the characters not only have their own strengths and weaknesses, some of them possess supernatural powers. There was a lot of freedom when it came to the game's playstyle, but in some areas certain characters are useless and require you to switch. For example, one character called Jones can use a telepathic ability to take control of enemies for a brief moment to activate switches or use their weapons to destroy obstacles. The problem with having a team this large is that when you aren't in control of them, they can die very easily. It can be so frustrating when your team dies constantly, requiring you to heal them all the time. In some cases, you feel as though it would be better if you could just go it alone and the game switches characters when it needed to tell a different part of the story. As you progress, there are times when the team does split up, and it makes the game a bit tougher as you don't have as many abilities at your disposal. Now, as this was written by Clive Barker, master of horror, you'd expect it to be somewhat frightening, yes? Well, no, it's not. Its lack of scares is somewhat disappointing, but its atmosphere and tone make up for it in some small ways. Now, it's not very pleasing in the looks department. The environments are often bleak, filled with the colour grey, soulless and dull. I guess it's supposed to convey the feeling of hopelessness and woe. But come on, it's a video game. There are moments of colour and a smattering of something interesting to look at, but don't expect the visuals to wow you. It's suitable, and that's about it. Obviously though, this game carries itself forward on the interesting playstyle, but despite it having some incredibly sound ideas, it's sadly overpowered by their poor execution. The quick time events are not very frequent, but it can take you by surprise, often leading to your death on the first try. Oh, we've all been there, haven't we? The character switching is unique, but the way you switch is so frustrating, clunky and slow. It doesn't pause the game or slow down time in any way to give you a chance of selecting the right character in a split second. Also, learning the team's names and remembering who does what in the first couple of hours is a chore. Out of these names, which one is the sniper? Not obvious, is it? Perhaps some symbols next to the names would have helped? Come on, Cody's! And the teams are split across 2 menus, so you have to press down to get to the other team, then press a direction to take control of a character, then you see an animation of you taking over their body, and then you can carry on fighting, and then you realise you picked the wrong one, and it's back into the menu again whilst you get riddled with bullets. I honestly don't get why they didn't just put the team select on a radial wheel. It's not like it hasn't been done before. But I digress. Its sound design is decent, the story is dark and creepy, the environments are bland, but the bleakness just serves the atmosphere, creating an overall uncomfortable gaming experience. There were rumblings of a sequel from Clive Barker himself, but as to whether or not that will ever happen, we won't know until the future. But sadly, that's all the time I've got this evening, but I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to leave me a comment to let me know what you thought about Jericho. Did you love it?
Did you rate it?
Let me know down below. And as always, sleep tight, embrace the night, and I'll see you next time.